This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast
with Tony Brueski.
We know very little about the relationship of Bryan Kohberger and his parents. I know a little bit enough to say that his dad was kind enough to drive across the country or fly across the country to then drive back across the country with his son so he wouldn't be alone for taking that very long road trip. So shows some dedication there, love, care for your child, which is good, healthy usually. But let's talk about this a little bit. Shavaun Scott is joining us. He's a psychotherapist and author. What might we take from the relationship with his parents and the sort of influence that they would have had on him in his childhood years and psychological development that could lead to violent behavior?
You know, we have heard for years so much about everybody who becomes violent was treated violently as a child, or they had terrible families and lived with abuse. That has not really been proven to be true in long-term studies. For a certain percentage, yes, you will find a certain percentage of violent criminal who were raised in violent homes. But when it gets into the actual psychopathic mind, very often they came from nice, normal families. And those are the folks we think there's just a genetic predisposition and they got some bad genes. So it's not always in any way a result of the way that they were brought up as kids. There was nothing aberrant in their family. There may have been a grandfather and a great-grandfather or somebody back in the history who had some personality aberrations. And I think that's what we're seeing with some of these families that look to be very normal, you know, but sometimes you can go back generations and see that there were people who were problematic in certain ways, although maybe not murderers, you know, but they committed other offenses or other kinds of crimes.
Although it does make you wonder with the way that we can track criminals today and the way that you would be able to solve crimes back then, very different. There was a lot more opportunity, yes. I guess, so to speak.
Yes, very true.
Heinous crimes and getting away with it. When we talk about his personality and the ability to, you know, one day look for, you know, like a fairly normal guy, a little awkward here and there, but I think we all know plenty of awkward people who are in no way near like a Kohberger. Is that a concept of splitting where he's able to compartmentalize two different versions of himself and only access one side when he needs to or wants to, or when the emotion takes him over?
Yeah, and there's a certain type of splitting. I think probably a better term would be compartmentalizing. Mm-hmm. And I think a person like this has the ability to compartmentalize, which means it's not out of awareness. It's not like a split personality where they don't remember what they do at other times. You know, They always know that this part is there, but they're very cagey at covering it up and only showing what they want the world to see. So they can appear to be superficially very normal. Mm-hmm. Although, yes, socially awkward. But yeah, we have all got people in our families who are socially awkward. So you can't attach too much meaning in that. So I think it's the person knows that when they engage in fantasies is when they're alone, it's at night, when they're in private, when they're on the internet, and the rest of the time, it's the mask of sanity.
I've been hearing, obviously, we were just talking about his parents that went in for that grand jury. In a case like this, how might parents reconcile their understanding of their own child with alleged criminal actions, especially ones like this? How do parents deal with something like that? I'm sure it's very individual, but in a case like this where it does look very, very damning, what goes on with parents of an alleged killer?
You know, I can only imagine these folks. They seem to be very, you know, rural Pennsylvania folks, very conventional in their lives, nothing thrill-seeking, nothing, you know, unusual about them at all. I can only imagine how shocked they are. And this would probably be something that they would be in denial for a long time and just not be able to believe it. And then if during the course of a trial, there's so much evidence, they gradually become convinced, I think they're going to have a very hard time, as anyone would, you know? Mm-hmm. None of us want to think we would raise a kid that could do something so monstrous. So is there a typical journey of a family? I don't think we have enough families, to know exactly how have they all coped with it. But I think typically going on an individual basis, you're going to see a lot of distress for those people. I do feel for them. They seem like very nice people. It's just got to be horrible.
Very, very much so. I was just finishing up the book that was written by the daughter of BTK and hearing her journey of how she went through it, Carrie Rawson. And it's a very fascinating story because a lot of it really reads, like a love story, not in a romantic way, but a father-daughter love story, a love of a father to a daughter and the experiences that she had. And there was never, in her recollection, very many signs of her dad being anything like this. Could he have a temper every now and then? Yes, that certainly is there. But it's not a story of abuse or anything like that throughout childhood. It's a loving human being to another and trying to reconcile, okay, the relationship that I have with this person has always been this way, but this person has these relationships over here that are this way. That's got to be so difficult to try and comprehend. Just absolutely horrendous
particularly with the BTK, who was so sadistic and planned for such a long period of time before each murder. And I mean, it was just horrible. And I can only imagine the confusion when you thought you had this very loving, normal father. And to try to wrap your head around the fact that, no, my father is the person who did these awful sadistic murders. Just, I would think that this is going to be a lifelong journey for her, that her father has colored her entire life, the way that she goes through the world and how she can feel safe in the world, knowing that the person she trusted the most had this secret world. Yeah. It's really, really, really hard for people.
It's a journey of healing, I'm sure, that really, truly never ends.
Never ends for them. Yeah.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Brueski.
Shavaun Scott, thank you for your insights. Always love having you on. We'll be talking with Shavaun more in the week about the Daybell. So be sure to press subscribe wherever you download podcasts so you don't miss any of our conversations right here. You get an ad-free experience through Apple Podcasts when you subscribe there. Be sure to check that out. I'm Tony Brueski. Stay with us.